Connor, it's Love-Hate Day.
Love-Hate is back, and what better time than after the NFL draft with all this rookie class. So we're not just talking Kentucky Derby, but we'll get there by the end of the show. We're talking love-hate. And, Matthew, we have to start with the quarterback loves, especially since a ton of them were just taken in the top 10 of the draft.
Yeah, and I think it's important, by the way, just to talk about love-hate is, again, I'm not saying these guys are going to make my love list at the beginning of the year. This is just based on what their teams did or did not do in the NFL draft. These are players whose fantasy value went up, the loves, or players whose fantasy value went down, the hates, obviously. So just important context there as well. The example I always give is Derrick Henry, because people are always like, because Connor, you do so much great work prior to the draft. Here's a guy that fits here. Here's a guy that does this. Here's what this guy does well. Here's what this guy doesn't. But the example I always give is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, coming out of college in 2016, to me was the second best running back in prospect. Only Ezekiel Elliott out of Ohio State was better than Derrick Henry coming out of Bama. But then Derrick Henry goes to Tennessee, which had just signed a huge deal with DeMarco Murray. He spent 2 years behind DeMarco Murray.
Right.
Like, no fantasy value for Derrick Henry his first 2 years, even though talent-wise,
He could play.
you knew he could play from the get-go as well. Look, there's some guys enjoying. A lot of big hats, I will say, here at Churchill Downs.
On Thurby Day.
It's Thurby. Thurby with a TH, because it is Thursday.
Yeah, not with an X. Or
Almost
a C.
60,000 people are expected today for Thursday as we lead up to the Oaks on Friday, and then, of course, the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby on Saturday. But you mentioned quarterbacks. That's where we start, obviously. You want to talk about Jaden Daniels, or you want me to talk about Jaden Daniels?
I think we'll hold off on Jaden Daniels
Williams.
because there's no better place to start than the guy that's favored for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jay, in Caleb Williams, and it's by a pretty good margin.
It's pretty. We talked about this the other day, but the fact that Caleb Williams is plus 200 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year in a class this loaded, like Bo Nix is going to be a starting quarterback in Week 1, and he's like 28-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's how loaded this class is, and with Caleb, we've spoken about it, but I can't remember a rookie going to a better situation as a quarterback than this Bears team where, like, his wide receiver 3 is Rome Odunze.
Yeah.
Like, the offensive line is much improved. I think he's going to be in good situations because of a great defense as well. So Caleb, I think, and also he's pretty talented himself. I think that he is as set up for success as any rookie quarterback we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, you knew prior to the draft Caleb Williams was going number 1 overall, and they had added Keenan Allen to DJ Moore. They'd added Gerald Everett to Cole Kmet. They'd added DeAndre Swift, a nice pass-catching running back out of the backfield, too. They've already got Khalil Herbert there as well. So it was already going to be an amazing situation for Williams to go into. But then Rome Odunze lasting until 9 and becoming his third weapon, whereas, like, there was talk that maybe the Chargers would take Neighbors and then Odunze would go to the Giants. And so, Odunze had a chance to be the number 1 wide receiver on an NFL team, and now he's the 3rd or 4th option for Caleb Williams, which is a ridiculous plethora of riches for Caleb Williams. Again, I've never seen a quarterback go 101, because generally when a team is picking 101, they're pretty bad. And so give credit to the Bears. They've done the complete opposite of what they did to Justin Fields, where they're just sort of like, figure it out, Justin. We're not going to be you much. They're like, we're not making that mistake again. We are going to give Caleb Williams every possible chance to work.
A loaded situation, and with Shane Waldron there as a first-year offensive coordinator with the Bears, he comes from being the offensive coordinator with the Seahawks. It feels like the training wheels are kind of off because Pete Carroll has influence, right? A little bit more run-heavy. I'm really curious to see how pass-happy Waldron can get with Caleb Williams. All those wide receivers, Matthew, good tight end room. And the team can play enough defense, I think, too, that the game script will be pretty manageable for Caleb Williams.
That's the thing. He's not going to get into these, what we saw last year with Justin Fields a lot of times, where it's just like you had to just keep chucking it, like these negative game scripts that put you in one-dimensional offenses. We're not going to see this. Jay, you and I have talked about this. I think they're on a really interesting bet to win the division. I get that the Packers, Vikings, and Lions are all there. They're all legit good teams, but the Bears have the longest odds, and, like, I don't think it's crazy to think they could win this division.
Yep, they're in the plus 400 range to win the division. I will say, if you want to bet on the Bears to win the division, you might be better off just betting like Matt Eberflus to win Coach of the Year, which is 4 times the price. Like, he will get a lot of credit if they win, coming from 7 wins last year, potentially winning the division with a rookie quarterback. That'd be a great story. Also, the Bears, everyone's going to be paying attention to this team. This is the first time they've ever had a quarterback. Like, Caleb Williams walked in the door as odds-on favorite to be the greatest quarterback in the history of that franchise, so be a ton of attention. And that defense was just about the best defense in football the second half of the season.
Matthew, to your credit, you've been quite patient. Jaden Daniels makes the love list. The Commanders' new
Shocker.
quarterback and the number 2 overall pick.
You know what's great is, like, listen, this will come as a surprise to you, but I just want to admit to the people at home, every once in a while, I get a little homerish.
What?
I know you guys
save your
talk about
spots.
my objectivity, but the truth of the matter is every once in a while I get a little bit homerish. But here's a chance where I don't actually have to be homerish. I think Jaden Daniels was the consensus number 2 pick. He was expected to go number 2. Most draft evaluators had him as the second best quarterback in this class as well. And it's a great landing spot for him as well. Cliff Kingsbury, of course, has a lot of experience with mobile quarterbacks. You think about Kyler Murray, who came in as a rookie under Cliff Kingsbury in 2019. From 2019 to 2022, when Kingsbury left the Cardinals, Kyler Murray was the 5th best quarterback in fantasy on a points-per-game basis. Terry McLaurin is there, Jahan Dotson. They add Austin Eckler in the offseason, a very good pass-catching running back. They're going to be able to run up the middle with Brian Robinson as well. I thought Ben Sinnott, and we'll talk about these guys a little bit later, but Luke McCaffrey, they added some other weapons around him as well. So Daniels, who obviously is a very mobile quarterback, I think there's an argument that he could wind up being the most fantasy successful quarterback. You know what I mean? Like Caleb Williams is going to have his, and, you know, Bo Nix is going to be throwing, and J.J. McCarthy's in a great situation. But given the rushing upside, there's a very good chance that at the end of the year, Jaden Daniels is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy among the rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah, and to build on your point that you're not a homer, we're doing an entire segment later in the show on Ben Sinnott, which just kind of builds on that point. I think with Jaden Daniels, the thing is that he may have some struggles, but he's going to be so fantasy friendly statistically. Like we saw, like putting up video game numbers that helped him win the Heisman. Like if he's going to take a lot of sacks and have turnovers, it's going to be outweighed by just the insane rushing value that he's going to provide in an offense that I think will be more competent.
Yeah, I mean, listen, different, obviously completely different offense. Hopefully the defense is better, but Sam Howell, behind a much worse offensive line with less talent around him, was a top 10 quarterback last year for much of the season in terms of fantasy. Again, a good rusher, not as good as Jaden Daniels. Good passer, not as good as Jaden Daniels. They've given him better offense, better coaching, better offensive line, better skilled players. So very excited about Jaden Daniels. I think he's a borderline QB1 this year.
Connor, do you think his body's going to hold up?
Well, that's the number one thing coaches are going to be on him about is don't take the hits you took in college because we need you in the game. Now, Daniels is an electric runner, and he's so electric he really doesn't need to take those hits. It's a little bit of the Lamar and Kyler, like I can make you miss and get out of bounds or slide. He just feels like he can make the next 3 guys miss, and they got to get that out of his brain. So you respect the playmaking ability, but try to stay healthy the whole season. That's the number 1 concern with him, not the production.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Connor, I'm curious because there was a lot of preseason chatter or pre-draft chatter about J.J. McCarthy. Was he a system quarterback? He wasn't asked to do much in Michigan, didn't have to. He was surrounded by so much talent, great defense. But he goes to a situation that's as good as any situation, other than maybe Chicago. I mean, going to Minnesota with a fantasy play caller, a very fantasy-friendly play caller in Kevin O'Connell, Jefferson and Addison. Like, what do we think about McCarthy's mechanics? Is he somebody that can be a fit for Minnesota? Was this is that who they always wanted, or was it just because Penix got screwed up and they're like, oh, he's the best available?
I'm a believer they would have wanted to go up for Drake May or even Michael Penix. They really liked him. Now, it's not that they got McCarthy and they're like, oh, what do we do now? I just think the fantasy upside in this year is a little capped, Matthew. That's my number 1 thing with McCarthy is that they're going to want to protect a young quarterback that really wasn't asked to be the hero of Michigan's team. He wasn't the driver of the offense. Made some big plays on 3rd downs, obviously played a lot of winning football, has mobility, but it's not Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams mobility in my eyes. So I look at this offense, and yes, it has Justin Jefferson. Yes, it has Jordan Addison. But in terms of what he's going to be asked to do, they're still going to lean on the run game and the play-action pass game, where I definitely have some reservations with him as a rookie in terms of fantasy output.
Now, he made the love list for me just because of the landing spot. Again, he's going to get to play, over half his games inside of a dome. He gets Jefferson and Addison. He's got Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Remember that. He's got T.J. Hawkins.
Really good coach.
He's got a really good coach who wants to pass. I mean, again, Kevin O'Connell, former NFL quarterback, former Sean McVay disciple. This is a pass-first offense. And to your point about Brian Flores did a great job with that defense, Jay, down the stretch. Again, McCarthy, it's kind of similar to Michigan. Like, he's not going to be asked to have to win games. Hey, you're down 3 touchdowns. go out and win it for us.
The last thing with McCarthy is that it's not 100% he's going to be the starter.
I agree.
In week 1. Like, Caleb Williams is definitely going to start. Jaden Daniels is going to start. JJ McCarthy, like, is he going to start? Like, I'm not too sure. Like, Sam Darnold is fairly accomplished for a backup quarterback, should have command over that offense. So he may start, but that's not a guarantee.
Matthew, how about some other quarterback loves outside of the rookies that just went? We were talking Superflex Dynasty, but some guys, because of the draft, they ended up winning a little bit.
Yeah, and I should note, I'm glad you mentioned Superflex Dynasty, because if you see ranks, those are our ranks for our Superflex. My Superflex Dynasty ranks are up on NBCSports.com, RotoWorld.com, as are my single quarterback league dynasty ranks. But that's what the ranks are. Just
that's why
most of the people that
the 5th overall player.
Of course, exactly. But listen, others receiving votes. Trevor Lawrence, just adding Brian Thomas is fantastic. Obviously, Gabe Davis being added in free agency as well. Remember Trevor Lawrence top 6 in deep pass attempts last season. So Brian Thomas, a great add there. And Bryce Young, we'll see, but Xavier Leggett in the first round. They traded up in the first round to go get him. Running back Jonathan Brooks, when he comes back, he'll be a beast to kind of keep that offense balanced as well. And how about Jatavian Sanders, who a lot of people had as the number 2 tight end in this class. So they gave Bryce Young, and they also improved the offensive line. So jury is still out on what kind of NFL quarterback Bryce Young is going to be, but all the pieces they added, along with Deontay Johnson in the offseason and new head coach Dave Canales, who resurrected Baker Mayfield last year and resurrected Geno Smith 2 years ago, kind of the quarterback whisperer. Give the Panthers credit. They're doing what they can to make Bryce Young work.
Jay, we've been talking about Trevor Lawrence for a long time, and we'll get to the hate list as you see here in just 1 second. Do you think there is some value in Lawrence because he hasn't been what we expected for so long, but now all the pieces look right for a breakout year?
I think so, and I think we're still early enough in Lawrence's career where you have to still regress a little bit to the fact that he's like a generational quarterback prospect in the same vein as an Andrew Luck or even a Peyton Manning. So I think that Lawrence he still has that MVP type of upside, and he was so banged up all of last year too, where I still project forward that he's going to be an elite quarterback.
I don't. So they're singing the national anthem right now. The race is about to start. So I don't know what to do. Because I'm on live TV, so I'm holding my hand over my heart. Should I stand though? Am I being am I being disrespectful? I don't know.
I'm Australian, so I really don't know what to do.
Yeah, in all cases, but specifically here as well. So God bless America. It's a weird transition, I'm not going to lie to you, to get to the hate list.
We might have to ride it out because we're going into the tough part of the show.
I know.
It's the hate list.
By the way, and she's crushing it, by the way, this singer. She's doing very well. Everyone here at Churchill Downs, as you can see, is sort of standing up. I don't know if you can see the screens back there. And I actually can't stand because I'm like...
you are absolutely wired to the chair.
I'm wired to the chair.
We will lose you.
I'm wired to the chair, which would be bad. But here's what I'll say. As you see right there, everyone is standing at attention. It's
job well done.
Let's go.
We had our very, Nick Castellanos moment of the fantasy football happy hour. But listen, we're powering through. Let's get into the hate list here, Matthew. Not necessarily quarterbacks that you're lower on them as individuals, but the situation is a little murky.
Yeah, look, Justin Herbert makes the hate list here. It was already concerns about him coming into the season, obviously, given the run-heavy nature of what we expect Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman want to do. But they lose Mike Williams. They lose Keenan Allen. And they were rumored to be in on Malik Neighbors, maybe Rome Odunze, and instead they went with Joe Alt, who's going to be a great run-blocking tackle. Hey, he's going to be great regardless. He'll be great at pass blocking too. But honestly, Ladd McConkey, and we like Ladd McConkey, but replacing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams with Ladd McConkey, and that's it. That's the first wide receiver they took in the first 5 rounds.
Right.
He's the only guy, and there's one wide receiver, Josh Palmer, on that roster with more than 38 career receptions. So it's just you don't feel great about Justin. His fantasy stock took a hit because they didn't draft Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. You'd feel better about him going into the season if they had an elite wide receiver.
What do you think is going to happen with Quentin Johnson this year, Connor? Is he just, he can't just be a write-off, surely?
No, I think he gets a chance. He's going to have opportunity. And if he doesn't put up, then they're going to have to go back to the well and look for another wide receiver that's going to get to play with Ladd McConkey. So, I mean, they did take 2 other big wide receivers in the 7th round. Yes, it's the 7th round, but in Brendan Rice, Cornelius Johnson was with Harbaugh in Michigan. See if you have a dart throw on one of those guys. So it's going to be a lot of opportunity and battle and competition in camp.
Either way, but the fact of the matter is there's a reason why Johnson and Rice were available in the 7th round.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And again, we like McConkey, but he's a slot guy. He's whatever Cornelius Johnson and Brendan Rice and even Ladd McConkey turn out to be, at least this year, they ain't going to be Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They're just not. Or Austin Eckler, too, for that matter. I mean, again, he's a running back, but just the pass-catching weapons in Gerald Everett. Justin Herbert had a much better pass-catching core around him last season than he's going to have this year. There's just no question about that. Obviously, then you add the run-heavy nature of what the offense is going to be. He makes the hate list, as does Michael Penix, who we were very excited about coming into college, coming into the pros. Where would he land? Would he be in Denver? Would he be with the Raiders? Would he be in Minnesota? Would they trade up for him? Instead, this has been talked about quite a bit, but he lands in Atlanta where we're not going to see him for a long time, guys.
Right, and Michael Penix was, in my opinion, the most pro-ready of the quarterbacks in this draft, and he's the guy that goes through a situation that he might not play for 2 years. So that's extremely problematic and hard to gauge in fantasy.
Yep. I actually don't mind the Penix trade. I don't mind the Penix pick now because I think that everyone's just people forget, first-round picks, they bust all the time. If you take Dallas Turner or whatever, it doesn't guarantee you're going to win the Super Bowl or whatever. If Penix was their guy and they think he's the guy going forward, then just take him. But I understand that, fantasy-wise, obviously, it's not a very good landing spot.
I will buy in on the dynasty value now.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a great landing spot, but I could not disagree more with your take, Jay. They're built to win now. If you're not built to win now, you don't sign Kirk Cousins to $100 million guaranteed. You know what I mean? Get you somebody that can help you to win now. To your point, the value of Michael Penix is that he is pro-ready because he's older. He's an older prospect. By the time you're done with Kirk Cousins' contract, they can't get out of it for 3 years. The earliest they could get out of it without completely crippling their cap is 4 years. So they're stuck with Kirk Cousins for 3 years. And by the way, we like Kirk Cousins. We think Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback. But they're stuck with Cousins for 3 years. Michael Penix is 26 or 27 before he takes a snap in the NFL unless Kirk Cousins suffers a big injury. And I get it, he's coming off the Achilles, so maybe. But it just feels like a poor use of draft capital. Feels like you could have traded down out of that spot. Feels like I don't think anyone thought Michael Penix would not be there. So, why sign the deal? If Michael Penix is your guy, hey, let's...
Yeah. Anyway, we'll have an off-season to debate Michael Penix.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.